This is a review of the humerus bone. The humerus bone, of course, makes up the upper portion of the upper limb. There are many anatomical structures on the humerus bone. So let's start with the most proximal structure, and that is the head of the humerus. The head of the humerus articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula, and just behind the head is the anatomical neck. So it's just the spot right behind the head. The surgical neck is here, but the anatomical neck is here. So head and anatomical neck, surgical neck. Behind the head, we find the greater and lesser tubercles. The greater tubercle, larger; lesser tubercle, smaller. When we look at the intertubercular sulcus or intertubercular groove, that is this groove that we see running through the tubercles. This is the long head of the biceps tendon, runs over the top of the head of the humerus and down between the two tubercles, forming this sulcus or groove. On the lateral aspect of the humerus here, we see the deltoid tuberosity. This is caused by the deltoid insertion pulling on the bone and creating this deltoid tuberosity. And like a tubercle, tuberosity is an extension of the bone. As we move down the diaphysis, and the diaphysis of the bone, of course, is the long part of the bone, then we get to the distal end of the humerus. At the distal end of the humerus, we remind ourselves that this is two joints. There is one joint which articulates with the ulna, and there is another joint which articulates with the radius. So let's look at the anatomical structures related to the humeroulnar joint. We can see that this is a condyle. It's not a smooth condyle in the sense of a rounded ball, but it's still a condyle, articulating surface, and it's called the trochlea. So the trochlea articulates with the ulna within the trochlear notch. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So that is the trochlea, a condyle. If we were to look at the lateral aspect of the proximal or distal end, of the humerus, we can see a perfectly round condyle called the capitulum. And the capitulum articulates with the head of the radius. And the head of the radius articulates. It can move in a flexion and extension, but it can also have some rotation, supination and pronation. This is the anterior aspect of the distal aspect of the humerus. If we were to look at the posterior aspect, we can see that there is a depression in the bone. This is called the olecranon fossa. The olecranon region of the body is the back of the elbow, which corresponds to the front, which is the antecubital. If we begin to look at the ulna bone, we can see that it has an olecranon process that will go into the olecranon fossa. So the olecranon fossa on a humerus bone accepts the olecranon process from the ulna and, in essence, allows us to straighten our arm. If I was to extend my arm with my finger, I can suddenly feel the bone disappears into the olecranon fossa, allowing me to straighten. Without it, my arm would not be able to straighten. It would be at a slight flexion. So we have, as well as our condyles, the trochlea and the capitulum, we have epicondyles. Epi meaning upon. So we have a medial epicondyle and a lateral epicondyle. Quick review. Head of the humerus, immediately behind the anatomical neck. This is the surgical neck where it normally breaks. The greater and lesser tuberosities, the intertubercular groove, the deltoid tuberosity, the trochlea, the capitulum, the medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, olecranon fossa.